This all happened a couple years ago. I was a huge Pokemon fanatic. There wasn't a single Pokemon game that I did not own. I'd played them all, done everything there was to do, and all that jazz. But what I loved even more than playing them was hacking them. Every day I would search on the internet for cheat codes and use them. When it was something as simple as walking through walls or getting hidden Pokemon to activate hexes and mods, I had done it all. I loved hacking. Anyways, it happened on just another normal day. When I was searching a cheat code forum, I got a message from another user of the forum. It went kind of like this. From Renegade Hacks OR 3304. To unknown. Subject, got something for you. Date, Friday, August 22nd, 2010, 11:44. Hey bro, saw some of the stuff you were posting and I got something you might like. You might have to start a new game for it to work, but I don't know. It's for Action Replay, Pokemon Platinum. Have fun. I hadn't seen this code before, so naturally, I was interested. I went ahead and put it into the AR, and started a new game on my spare Pokemon Platinum. I played it for a little while, and nothing abnormal was happening. I was getting a little impatient after I beat Roark, since nothing had happened yet. But still, I was having a fun nostalgia trip, and I was still interested in what the code would do, so I played on. I kept playing, but still, nothing was happening. I was starting to wonder if I had been duped, if nothing was going to happen at all, and this guy was just wasting my time. But since I had nothing else to do, I kept playing. Finally, I had 7 gym badges, and was going through Mount Coronet when things started happening. I was going through the mountain, infested with grunts. The battles went normally, except for the dialogue. Every once in a while, a grunt would say something different after you beat him. I remember when I started battling one of them, he said, "Turn back while you have the chance." And after I beat him, "Don't go any further. You will be sorry." Of course, this only provoked my interest even further. I kept going until I was at the snowy part, almost near the top. This is where really weird things started to happen. Whenever I battled a wild Pokemon, it fled. Every grunt I met told me to turn back, and when I finally reached Spear Pillar, I battled Mars and Jupiter normally. But again, their after-battle speech was different. It went, "It's too late now. You should have listened. You should have turned back. All is lost." After that, Barry healed my Pokemon and said, "May God have mercy on your soul." Then he ran off. And Cyrus's cutscene started. Dialga and Palkia were summoned, but their cries were lower, like their fainting cries. Then the Pixies came, and Cyrus remarked about how they could only control one of them. I was really anxious now, because I knew something was going to happen when Giratina appeared. I was right. The screen darkened, and the hole in the floor appeared. The pixels on top of the screen were going crazy, moving around much faster than they were before. What happened next is very difficult to describe, but I'll try to describe it as best as I can. Giratina's red eyes peered out of the void. Something was different about them. Also, they were blood red. And they seemed to be peering right into my soul. It sent chills up my spine. Then Giratina emerged from the void, sending a shockwave over the Spear Pillar, distorting the pillars. Cyrus was still babbling on about how interesting it was, trying to keep his cool. Then Giratina spread his wings, splattering dark matter on the floor. This was very disturbing to me, but it wasn't Giratina spreading his wings that scared me. It was his cry when he did. It wasn't his usual cry. It was a lot higher. It was a piercing, distorted noise. Distorted so much that it almost sounded like a scream. But this was nothing compared to what happened next. Giratina readied himself to strike, his claws turning a bright orange. I noticed that they were dripping blood. Then he jumped, but this time it seemed much more real, as if he were almost jumping out of the screen. His screeching cry played again. The screen went black for about 30 seconds. When it came back on, I nearly dropped my DS. The spear pillar was covered in blood. Cyrus was lying on the floor with 6 gaping holes in his body, oozing blood. I walked around and saw Dialga and Palkia, also dead, with 6 holes in their body. I noticed that the spear pillar was even more distorted than before, with 6 of its pillars curved intensely, resembling Giratina's claws. Cynthia was nowhere to be found. I tried to exit, but a message popped up saying, "You can't turn back now." I was pretty freaked out at this point, but things were just starting. After that message popped up, my character started walking towards the portal in the floor. Instead of it being the portal like it was supposed to be after Giratina dragged Cyrus into the distortion world, it was like it was before. Giratina's eyes appeared, and then he emerged and spread his wings. Instead of the dark matter splattering on the floor, it was blood. His cry played again, even higher and more human-like. Then he jumped, his same jump that looked like he almost came out of the screen. The screen went black, except for my character. He stood for a second, and then spun around like when you use an escape rope. Except that he went down instead of up. Then I spawned in the distortion world. Except that it wasn't the distortion world. It was worse. The platforms here were also covered in blood. The sky below, instead of being purplish black, was red. And the caption, instead of saying distortion world, said hell. Then Mesprit flew up to me, and its sprite flashed on the screen. I could barely look at it. It was a bloody, mangling thing that was barely identifiable as Mesprit. It also looked sad, sadder than anything I've seen before. Then another terrible thing happened. Giratina flew by and brutally beheaded Mesprit. Its sprite fell down into the abyss. I couldn't bear to look at this scene anymore, so I opened the menu and selected my party. But something had changed about them too. As if I couldn't be freaked out anymore. I was. There were 5 unknowns in my party, and an Absol. The unknown spelled Yor, and the Absol's nickname was Next. I quickly closed my party only to find out that I wasn't standing at the entrance to the distortion world anymore. I was standing where I would fight Giratina. He floated down in front of me. I turned to the other way, but again a message popped up said, "You can't turn back now." Then my trainer turned around and battled Giratina. Giratina's cry was even higher pitched now, and it sounded exactly like a human screaming. The battle started. I had all my old Pokemon back now, but I still couldn't control them. The first Pokemon was my Infernape. Giratina moved first. Giratina used Curse, it said. Giratina cut his own HP and laid a curse on my Pokemon. My Pokemon then used Struggle. For some reason, it didn't affect Giratina, but my Pokemon still took damage. I could only watch as the curse kept depleting Infernape's health, and he kept hurting himself. Finally, his HP reached 0, but it didn't end there. A message popped up. "Infernape has died," it said. But it didn't stop there. The battle scene went away, and the music stopped, instead of it showing Infernape's sprite. The Giratina appeared behind him. Another caption popped up. "Giratina used Leech Life," it said. What happened next, I can barely write down. It's so gruesome. Giratina began stabbing Infernape with each of his claws, leaving gaping holes in his body. Then they started gushing blood. Infernape's whole body started shaking, and his eyes rolled back into his head. It looked like he was having a seizure, With each stab, the seizures got worse. With the last stab, his skin began melting off, leaving his insides showing. Giratina then began ripping them out, spilling blood everywhere. All that was left was a skeleton. Then the battle scene returned. Infernape's sprite went down, like a normal fainting scene, but the caption still said Infernape has died. After that, my next Pokemon was sent out, automatically. I still couldn't control anything. The same battle scene happened, followed by Giratina ripping its insides out. This happened for all of my Pokemon. Each murder scene got progressively worse and more gruesome. Finally, all my Pokemon were gone. But it still wasn't over. My trainer's sprite appeared. This next part might have been the most disturbing of all. He reached out to me, and in a real human voice, he called out, "Help." Giratina appeared behind him. Then a caption appeared and said, "Giratina used leech life." Giratina's cries started playing over and over, higher and higher, sounding like human screams. He stabbed my character through the back, and his tentacle went up his stomach and out his mouth. He began having a seizure, and with each stab it got worse. He was vomiting blood, and Giratina was smiling widely, and at the last moment, his face morphed into mine. It had a look of sheer terror on it. With one final stab, Giratina ended his life. His body slumped to the ground, the 6 holes in his body still oozing blood. I had had enough. I shut off my DS and tried to calm down and think. I decided that I would delete the code from my action replay, erase my save game from the DS, and start a new one. I turned my DS on, selected Pokemon Platinum, and went to the title screen. I couldn't bear to look at Giratina anymore. I pressed start, and the screen went black. I started mashing buttons, but nothing happened for about 2 minutes. Then a message appeared, and it said, "You're next." Then Giratina's 2 blood-red eyes appeared on the screen, staring into my soul. He screeched again, and did his jump that looked like it was almost coming out of the screen. Except this time, it was different. It was coming out of the screen. Its claws came out, then its head, staring at me and smiling. I was frozen in terror and disbelief. Then it grabbed me, started pulling me into the game. I came to my senses and started struggling to get free, but its hold was too strong. It was still pulling me in. With the last ditch effort, I forced the DS closed and threw it into my fireplace. It started screaming, the high-pitched human scream. The scream morphed into a roar, louder than anything you have ever heard, as loud as a rocket's engine. It kept roaring as it burned. Finally, after a few minutes, the roaring died away into a small squeal as it burned away, ceasing to exist. I crawled weakly onto my bed, not knowing what to do. I tried forcing my eyes closed, but whenever I closed them, I saw Giratina's eyes staring back at me. I don't know how long I stayed on my bed, maybe hours. After a long time, I heard my mother's car pulling into the driveway. I was still too weak and scared to move. She called to me, telling me she was home. I didn't answer. She came into my room and saw me shaking on my bed. She dropped her grocery bags and rushed over to my side. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Come on, get up. I'll get you a glass of water." I rolled over and slowly got out of bed. She was just leaving the room and happened to look back at me. "Oh my God!" she yelled. "What happened to your chest?" I looked down and saw that my shirt was torn. I removed it and was confronted by 6 scratch marks over my heart, oozing blood. As I said before, everything here is completely true. Don't ask me how any of this happened. I don't know how. When I told my mom what happened, she didn't believe me. My psychologist didn't believe me either. Nobody would believe me. They all tell me it was my imagination, but I saw what I saw. I went back to the forum where Renegade Hacks OR 3304 had sent me the message. I tried to search for him, but his account was nowhere to be found. The only proof I had was this message. My burnt DS and the scars on my chest. My mother suggested that I try the cheat code again, but I would never do that. It is too dangerous for me, her, or anyone to try this. I googled it, and thank God it wasn't anywhere. I deleted the cheat code from my computer. Hopefully it's gone forever now. I guess it's better for everyone to think I'm crazy than to find out that I'm not. If you ever find this code, for the love of God, don't use it. I will never, ever cheat on a game again. I will never play Pokemon Platinum again. I just can't bear to see Giratina anywhere. I sometimes have nightmares about Giratina murdering my Pokemon and my trainer, and then dragging me into the DS. The reason I'm posting this 2 years after it happened was that I reconvinced myself that it did happen. After everyone told me that I was crazy. And then I also had finally got the courage to talk about it. So that's my story, I guess. Even now, if I shut my eyes, I can sometimes still see Giratina looking back at me, staring into my soul.